The legend of the Trojan War remains one of the most famous stories from history, full of love, betrayal, and a war that lasts 10 years. But can such an epic story be based on reality, or is it purely the product of ancient imagination? Suppose the real cause of this war was not love, but something more practical, the control over an essential trading route. In this video, we'll explore the real history behind the myth. We'll investigate the archaeological evidence for Troy, examine the possible causes of the war, and dissect the key players to determine what might be fact and what's simply legend. Homer's Iliad became famous because of this story about the Trojan War. The story is about a prince of Troy who took away Helen, the queen of Sparta, and led to a 10-year battle with an ending of the famous Trojan Horse and the fall of Troy. Yet, though the myth is so fascinating and interesting, in fact, it brings out so many questions about what really happened. Was there, in fact, a city named Troy? Did a war actually occur there? And if so, what were the real reasons for it? For such a long time, most people thought that Troy was a mythical place that only existed in ancient books. Yet, during the late 19th century, everything changed with the discoveries of archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann. He started digging at an excavation site in modern Turkey and found the remains of what, today, is believed to be the ancient city of Troy. The city lies at Hisarlik, which fits well with descriptions of where Troy was near the Dardanelles, an important waterway that links the Aegean and Black Seas. This discovery supports the idea that Troy was not just a myth, but a real and active city during the Late Bronze Age. The location of Troy was of strategic importance. Control of the Strait of Dardanelles directly meant control of a very important route for transposing goods between the two seas, Aegean and Black. Then, due to Greece's less fertile land, sea trading was Greece's primary source of supply. Greek city-states, particularly those led by Mycenae, would have seen control of Troy as a major boon, as it could give them control of trade routes that were integral to their economies. The riches of Troy and its prestige in the region most likely provided an irresistible target for the Greek armies to invade. This geopolitical view shifts the focus away from the idealized version of the war. Just like Homer's Iliad speaks of love, betrayal, and the wrath of the gods, it feels more that the Trojan War was ignited, as opposed to these ideals, by the economy and who dominates power. The abduction of Helen probably merely offered a pretext for which the Greeks, under King Agamemnon's leadership, required in order to start a military action to seize control over Troy's valuable location. Helen's role then became symbolic, less a real reason for war and more a reason to explain a greater fight for power and money. Our single source on the Trojan War is Homer's Iliad, composed many years after the events it recounts. The poem mixes history and myth, making it hard to tell what's fact and what's fiction. There are also gods in the Iliad, like Zeus and Apollo, influencing the battles by choosing which side should win. These parts of the story contribute to excitement and worth, but make it less historical. The existence of Troy, as shown in archaeological evidence, implies that there existed a strong city which could have been the target of a Mycenaean attack. Also, another important thing to ponder is the timing of the war. Historians agree that if it were indeed the Trojan War, it would have occurred at the height of the Mycenaean period, most probably around 1250 BCE. This was at a time of much turmoil in the Mediterranean, known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, in which many significant civilizations collapsed. In this context, the conflict between Mycenaean Greeks and Troy may have been just one of many power struggles for control over resources and territories. Troy was likely a trade center, supporting the argument that if the Trojan War did happen, it was more about economic power than personal reasons. Troy was wealthy because it controlled the trade routes, making it very attractive to the Mycenaean Greeks. The control of the Dardanelles also meant controlling entrance to the Black Sea, where grain, wood, and metals were traded. This financial motive provides a much better explanation for the war than the idealized story about Helen and Paris. Even with these more practical explanations, the story of Helen still holds great significance. In the legend, Helen is said to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and when Paris took her away, the whole conflict started. In short, there is no historical proof that Helen actually existed. She may have been an invention symbolizing Troy's wealth or importance. Her role in the story could have been created to add a personal dimension to a conflict that was really about politics and economics. One of the most lasting parts of the Troy story is the tale of the horse. According to the Iliad, after 10 years of fighting, the Greeks built a big wooden horse and hid soldiers inside it. The Trojans brought it into their city because they thought the horse was a gift of peace. That night, when the Greek soldiers came out of the horse, opened the gates, and allowed the Greek army to enter, it was the end of Troy. Although this is one of the most famous stories in Western literature, it is likely just a myth. There is no archaeological evidence to prove that such an event took place. However, some historians believe the Trojan horse could be a metaphor for a more typical military strategy, like using siege engines or deception. While the clever strategy of breaching Troy's walls happened, it's unlikely that soldiers hid inside a wooden horse. Over time, the story may have evolved into the version we know today, with the horse representing cunning and trickery. The popular story of the Trojan War has survived the ages, but the more practical reasons for the war were probably much simpler. Troy's wealth and strategic location made it valuable, so the Mycenaean Greeks had a strong interest in controlling it. The abduction of Helen and the Trojan horse may have been later additions that added drama to the story. The legend transcends history and has become a symbol of human nature, reflecting themes of love, betrayal, honor, and revenge. The characters, Achilles, Hector, Paris, and Helen, represent different aspects of humanity, showing how love and beauty could ignite destruction. These themes still resonate in literature, art, and culture, making the Trojan War one of the most important stories in history. Although the evidence for many events in the Iliad is not strong, the story of Troy has endured. Archaeological discoveries confirm that Troy existed and was likely an important city. It's even possible that its destruction came from a real conflict. Whether Helen, Achilles, or the Trojan horse ever existed doesn't change the fact that the Trojan War remains one of the greatest legends ever told. Most of what we know today is a mix of truth and fiction. The war, if it did happen, was likely driven by money and politics rather than the kidnapping of Helen. Since Troy controlled such a valuable trade route, it was a prize for the Greeks. The story, made famous by Homer, has grown larger over time, becoming a timeless tale of bravery, tragedy, and the effects of war. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Trojan War, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.